guys get angry? Get angry after leaving JWs? So many Jehovah's Witnesses get so angry, and sometimes they don't even know why. Why are they getting so angry versus, people who just walk away and they're not really angry? Why? Were you ever angry at yourself? Who in their right mind would get angry at themselves? Well, the truth is sometimes we do. Why? Because we get angry every time we experience injustice. But how do we experience injustice on ourselves? Well, you got to first set the rule. If there is a rule and you're breaking that rule, you're going to feel injustice because the rule was set. And if somebody breaks that rule, that's the moment you get angry. It's like you're driving a car and then it's traffic. You don't like it. And it's like, okay, fine, it's traffic. But the moment people start driving on the shoulder, ignoring the traffic lights and breaking the laws just so they can get a few seconds ahead, it gets you angry. That's what happens when we experience injustice. We're starting to feel angry. And sometimes we break our own rules. And when we break our own rules, we're angry with ourselves. We promised ourselves, I want to lose weight, and then I'm not going to eat that donut. But then the gurney was so fresh and nice and it smelled so good. And maybe this only one time. I'm going to start as of 1st of January. And then we break our own rule. And then we're angry at ourselves. So what happens with JWs? Now, JWs have more than enough rules to go about. But for some odd reason, they actually don't get that angry. They don't get angry when they go door to door and people sometimes say stuff to them that they don't really appreciate. They get criticized quite heavily, and yet they don't get angry. People come and they're being confrontational with them sometimes on the street with the carts, and ex-JWs get angry, but JWs actually, they don't get that angry. They will walk away. They usually be quiet. They don't want to shout or yell or pick on the dirt. They're just going to walk away from the situation if they see that there's no point of trying to convince somebody. Why is it that they don't get angry? At one point I was watching, I don't know if you remember the movie where there was Batman, Joker, and Joker was quite a strong character in that movie. He promised to blow up a hospital, and everybody started freaking out. And Harvey Dent, if you remember, half of his face was burned and he was in the hospital. And then Joker walks up to him dressed up as a nurse. And he says something that was so profound that it changed my way of looking at JWs. Seriously. I wish I made the mistake by not preparing myself to show you the scene, but I hope many of you remember. If you didn't, go watch it again. Joker says this: if there is a plan, nobody panics. Even if the plan is horrific, if it's horrifying, it's all part of the plan. But the moment there is no plan, it's complete chaos. And I thought about this for quite a while. Is it possible that we as humans have this tendency of following a plan? When we believe a plan, even if the plan doesn't make sense, even if the plan is horrific, damaging, harmful, but it's part of the plan. And we don't have a better plan. See, what Joker did, he introduced a plan that was absolutely horrible. He said, I'm going to kill one person per day for as long as Batman remains with his mask. Show yourself who you are. I'm going to stop killing. Now, obviously, Batman was not killing the people. Obviously, people were not killing those people. It was Joker who was killing the people, and he came up with that plan. And people didn't turn against Joker. They turned against Batman. He said he's the one that chooses not to reveal himself, and because of him, people are dying. And then I thought, quite a bit about the plan the Jehovah's Witnesses have. Their plan is horrific. It's a horrific plan. Just think about it. 8 million Jehovah's Witnesses will live. 8 billion people will have to be killed just so they can take over the world. It's a horrific plan. But it was part of the plan. And we felt special. We felt like we're the chosen people. We're part of that plan. 1 out of 1,000. 1 out of 1,000 is a witness. What a privilege that is to be the chosen one. It's a horrific plan when you think about it. And yet, we believed it. We believe that we're part of this plan, that we should be part of this plan. And anybody that is not part of this plan, the blood is on them. The fault is on them. It's completely unjust. We didn't care about justice, to be honest with you, but we cared about the plan. And when somebody tells you a plan and you believe in that mission, then justice no longer matters. See, when a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses were being tried in their courts with 3 elders, they actually thought that if they bring things like logic, truth, if they bring love, if they bring scriptures, if they bring history, if they bring the magazines from Jehovah's Witnesses, that they will win, that they will see justice in their courts. Oh boy, I don't know about you, but most people got very disappointed. Why? Because the court, the way the system is set up for Jehovah's Witnesses, there is basically 3 levels. And most people don't understand. They think there is 1, maybe 2 at most. So the first layer is when you do something wrong. You cross the boundaries. You do some sort of sin that is classified as serious sin, and that sin needs to be dealt with judicially. But before they establish whether you actually committed this sin or not, they need 2 witnesses. And these witnesses can come from congregation, but they will not bring people who are not from the congregation. You think about it, sometimes they need 2 witnesses who are Jehovah's Witnesses in good standing. Those are good witnesses. But if you bring somebody from outside who are not witnesses, they don't want to talk to them. They don't want nothing to do with it, even though the Bible does not specify what type of a witness, what does the witness have to believe in and what religion has to belong to, but those are the rules. And when they don't have the 2 witnesses, they want a confession. So let's say they have 1 witness. Somebody says, oh, I saw this person, and I think this person is romantically involved with a worldly person, and they spend some time together alone. Right? Let's say there's an accusation like this, but they only have 1 witness. So they go through this person and they ask questions. And if the person admits, that's what I've done, that's the moment they decide that you are guilty of a serious sin. So a committee, an actual judicial committee, is happening at the time when 2 elders come to you with questions, because they want to establish whether you are guilty of that sin or not. So a lot of people think, oh yeah, I got this elder in the congregation, he's a friend of mine. We've been friends for so long. I have some doubts. Let me sit and discuss it with him. And you go with a good faith, and the brothers will say, oh, you know what? It looks like you need a shepherding call. So let me grab another elder and we'll come to you maybe Sunday after the meeting. We'll sit down and help you with whatever it is that you have doubts with. And you might think, great idea. I mean, those are shepherds. They're my friends. They're elders in my congregation. They will help me to understand some things. Maybe I will help them to understand certain things. We'll find a common ground. Little did they know that at that moment, they're actually being judged. They're actually being judged whether apostasy is creeping into the congregation. They want to know, first of all, what is it that you disagree with? One of the number one question would be, do you believe that Jehovah's Witnesses are using, that Jehovah is using governing body as a channel of communication with the congregation? Now, if you say no, then that is, some people even said that that is a sin against the Holy Spirit, and there is no forgiveness for that. So you're as good as gone. But that is sufficient for them to say, oh, that is an apostasy. But maybe you're not there. Maybe you don't know the answer to the question, and maybe you're just kind of wondering about 1914, 607. Maybe you have doubts about other things, and you're just questioning things. Well, what happens is the moment they determine you are guilty of apostasy, then he goes to so-called judicial committee. But the judicial committee, it's not really judging whether you're guilty or not. That has already been established. And an average JW doesn't know this because they don't know the procedures that elders go through. And when you show up for the so-called judicial committee with 3 elders, they're not there to establish whether you're guilty or not. You cannot defend yourself by telling them, I'm innocent. No, it's too late. They already established that you're guilty. And the only thing they're trying to establish is who knows about it, how does your sin will affect the congregation, and how that will, the effect that you will bring to, as they call Jehovah's name, but truthfully, a public opinion. What does the congregation think about this? How many people know about this? Can we cover this up, basically? If the answer is no, chances are you're going to get at least publicly reproved, if not disfellowshipped. Many people got disfellowshipped because they wanted to set an example to the congregation. Not because the person was not repentant. A lot of people think, oh yeah, I'm just going to go and show repentance. No. Repentance is not the number one thing that is being judged over there. It's who knows about it. The unity. Is this sin that you have committed, will that impact the unity in the congregation? If the answer is yes, if there are people who will go and start questioning the elders, the governing body, and the organization, or whatever, if that will have this impact, then believe me, you don't have chances of saying, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Besides, how do you show repentance over things you believe in? It's pretty much impossible. So at that moment, they're trying to establish what punishment to give you. Remember, Jehovah's Witnesses don't know how to help others. They only know how to punish others, believing that the punishment will help you. There's a huge difference between helping an individual and punishing the individual, hoping that the punishment will bring them back in line. There's a huge difference. Yes, we have children, and we sometimes punish our children because they misbehave, but we're not children, and they're not our parents. You are an adult. You can make your own decisions. But this is their religion, and those are the rules. And you have a choice between following the rules if you want to be in it, or walk away if you want to lead your life the way you want to. And that's pretty much it. There is nothing in between. So if you're looking for justice, you're not going to find it among Jehovah's Witnesses. You're going to find verdict. They're going to tell you what punishment to give you. And this is something that many XGWs don't get it. They think, oh, I'm going to go to this judicial committee and I'm going to explain to them scripturally and logically, and I'm going to show it from their own magazines, and they have to believe me. No, they don't. They don't have to look at any of your witnesses. They don't have to look at any of the material that you're showing them. They don't have to look at anything, because they're not judging whether you're right or wrong. They're judging if you're repentant or not. They're judging if you're listening to their counsel. They're judging if you're going to follow and obey. That's what they're judging. They're completely not interested if you're correct. So if you're looking for justice, how are you going to find it justice in a place where the people are not looking for the truth? and they're not looking for what's right. They're looking for your repentance and obedience. So you can bring whatever you want to the table, it will not be looked at. It's you might think that's crazy, but it's not. Those are their rules. It's just like any company out there. You you go work for your boss. Your boss gives you a policy and he says, you know what, you're going to be wearing this t-shirt because you're working for McDonald's now, and you have to wear this uniform, and you have to show up at this hour, and you have to work until this hour. Those are the words you cannot say to the customers. Okay, there's a list of things that you're not allowed to do. There are consequences if you break those rules. There's a huge list of the policy of you, what you can and cannot do. Your boss owns you from the time you start working till the time you finish work. You represent him, you represent his values, this company. And the way you behave, the way you act at work will reflect on the company. Many of you, I'm pretty sure, you saw an individual who worked for a big company and they misbehaved, and now you're thinking really bad about the entire company, that this company is horrible because this is how they treated me. No, it was an individual that treated you bad. So the structure among JW is exactly the same. It is a company, it is a watchtower company, and we were volunteer workers for that company. They have their own policy, and they will tell you what is allowed, what is not allowed. The problem is you never clock out. You never clock out. Therefore, your life does not belong to you. See, when you're working for somebody else and they're paying you for your time, you're agreeing to that deal because you know, okay, I will do whatever you're telling me to do from this hour to this hour. But what I do after I clock out, it's none of your business. It's none of your business. What I do with my personal life, personal time, you cannot touch this. The clothes I'm wearing, I'm hanging out with, whatever I do, it's out. You have nothing to say. But during the hours of work, you cannot do whatever you want. You're doing what your employer is asking you to do. But among JWs, you're not working from 9 to 5. You're not a JW only when you're at the meeting or in service. You're a JW 24/7. So that pressure of being certain way is all the time. All the time. This is why a lot of JWs actually are two-faced, because when people see them, they have to represent this organization and God and everything, while at home, maybe when nobody sees, they have a totally different personality. One of the most common, I think, complaint, it was from, I would say, women most of the time, when they would come to the elders and complain about their husbands, saying, you guys think that this guy is so good because he gives good talks, he gives answers at the meeting, he has high hours in service, but at home he's somebody else. I need you to know what this person is doing at home, because you guys are giving him privileges, and wow, he is such a spiritual man. Believe me, he's far from it. And and it's very often that happens because there is such a pressure to be somebody who you're not, okay, that these people starting to have a split personality. It's true. But the injustice happens because we're expecting that people will behave certain way, and we're agreeing to the plan, we're agreeing to the rules. But the moment we see that the rules are not being used accordingly to the people all across the board the same, that's when the injustice happens. When you see that they're weighing people with different weights, and if they have a sister, for example, who, let's say, had sex before marriage, and let's say a couple, right, comes to elders and they say, you know what, we, before we got married, we had sex, and they confessed to everything, and maybe it was 2 3 5 years ago, but their conscience was bothering them, they wanted to come clean, and they can't explain the situation. It happens very often, believe me. What do elders do? The elders sometimes would not even call a judicial committee. They say, you know what? It happened a long time ago. You guys are married now. We're going to do a private reproval. Clearly, you guys are repentant, and we're just going to remove maybe some of your privileges. You're not going to be able to answer. You're not going to be able to carry microphones. 3 months later, you're good. And that is very common. Very common. Why? Because what's the most important in the congregation is unity, right? So if people hear that, oh, this married couple who is really good in the congregation, a great example to others, all of a sudden they're disfellowshipped, all of a sudden they are publicly reproved, stories start creating. People start create gossip and stories, whatever. But if we can, nobody knows about this, we can shove it underneath the carpet. Beautiful. No problem. People probably won't even notice that these guys cannot answer because there's no need to answer, right? Like, you answer if you want to. Scenario number 2. Somebody comes and says, hey, I had sex with somebody at work, but it happened many years ago. It happened 4 or 5 years ago, right? And the person comes forward and says, my conscience was bothering me. I want to come clean. Same story. But now, scenario is a little bit different. Well, why were you hiding it for so many years? Were you repentant? Well, if you were repentant, you would come right away. If you carried this on for all those years, I don't know if you're repentant, right? There's different questioning is happening if the person didn't get married with the other person, especially if the person was worthy, that the partner of sex. Totally different questions. Different weights are being applied at that moment. And the person very often gets at least publicly reproved, just in case somebody from the world says, hey, you know what? I slept with this guy and he was a witness and nothing happened to him or whatever. They don't want this, right? Very often, they would judge based on who knows in the congregation. And very often people also get disfellowshipped for this. But there is a third scenario that is really different than most JW have no idea about. An elder in the congregation comes forward and he says, you know what? I had sex before marriage years ago and my conscience is bothering me. I just wanted to come clean. You know what they say for the in a book for the elders? Well, if the brother is a good example in the congregation and Jehovah is blessing him and we see the Holy Spirit is upon him, then there's no need to remove him from being an elder. He remains where he is. It's a loophole. So if any of the elders want to have sex, they just have to cover it up. Don't come forward. Years later, if he comes out, you tell them the truth and nothing happens to you. Why? Because justice is not their top value. Truth is not their top value. Unity is their top value. And if we remove you from being an elder, then the congregation starts thinking, what did he do wrong? Are the elders making mistakes? Was he appointed by a Holy Spirit and now removed? Now, they don't like when elders resign, and they don't like to remove elders from that position because it causes problems in the congregation. If the guy is obedient and he follows all the rules, then it looks very suspicious that this guy is no longer an elder. So they would cover it up. It's different ways that they're measuring for one person and the other person. And this is what gets everybody angry, because you're like, well, how come, and many people saw this. Well, this guy, he's the son of an elder and he got away with it. But this girl, she's nobody. So she was disfellowship, but he got private reproval, although they both had sex. It's like, oh, no, because he repented and she didn't. Yeah, BS. There's a lot of injustice that is happening. But truthfully, it's not about us looking for justice among Jehovah's Witnesses. It's about us expecting that justice. Because think about it, they set their own rules. If they're setting their own rules, they will always win. It's a lesson that the quicker you learn is the better. If somebody sets the rules, they will always win. If you are setting the rules, you're going to set the rules so you can win. Every company sets up a policy so they can win, so they can have a profit, so they can survive. They're not going to set up the rules so their employees will get rich while the company will go bankrupt. That's not how it works. They're going to make sure that the company goes forward no matter what, even if some individuals will make minimum wage or won't even get paid, because it's more important to keep the company afloat than to take care of the little ones. It's the same thing with any religion, any organization. It is more important to keep the organization afloat than to care about the individual. Jehovah's Witnesses are no different. Their main thing is to keep the unity of the congregation, keep people obeying, keep people all united. Those are the values. Now, if you are obedient, if you're following the rules, then you got nothing to worry about. Everything is part of the plan. And because everything's part of the plan, even if things are completely illogical, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. It doesn't matter because it's all part of the plan. We might think of killing another person as one of the worst things that you can do, killing a baby, killing women, children, elderly people. That you can't, maybe you're just watching the news and you're hearing these stories and your heart is bleeding just to see the injustice that is happening around the world. But if Jesus comes with 144,000 and all his army to come and slaughter 8 billion people, that's totally fine. That's part of the plan. How many of us picked up the Bible, even as believing Jehovah's Witnesses, we read the most horrific events that took place in the Bible, and we were totally fine with it? When soldiers were told to go and open up bellies of pregnant women and take the children and smash against rocks. That was the most barbaric history that you can imagine. And we were totally fine with it. We said, yeah, that's part of the plan. God has a plan. He knows better than me. Who am I to question this? He knows people's hearts. So he knew who to kill. He gave the life, he can take it back. Right? We gave those kind of weird justifications for the most barbaric and horrific things that we read, and it's still happening today. As a matter of fact, if anybody who is a Jehovah's Witness believes that they will go to heaven, that they're chosen to be one of the 144,000, what they truly believe is when Armageddon comes, they will go to heaven, sit on a white horse, come back here when Armageddon comes, and slaughter everybody who's not a Jehovah's Witness or who's not believer. You know what that means? That means they can go to service, knock on the door, and say, hey, join my religion or I'm coming back to kill you. That's what they believe. That's what they preach. They just don't say it that way, but that's what it is. That is their core belief. And you know what? They're thinking they're saving people. We're here to save you. From who? From me, because I'm about to come back and kill you. But if you listen to me, I'll help you. Jesus will save you. Jehovah will save you. That's crazy when you think about it just a little bit logically, not too much, but just a little bit. It's the most unjust thing you can possibly imagine. If I were to tell anyone, oh, come work for me, or I'll kill you, or my friend will kill you, I'll end up in jail. Why is it okay in the religion? Mafia does this, no? Mafia say, okay, go do what I tell you to do, or I have friends. I'm not gonna do anything to you, but I heard of somebody who did not obey, and somebody, this happened to them and their family. It's called blackmail. It's not a free will, it's a blackmail. When you tell somebody, do this or I will kill you, or I will torture you forever, like many religions threaten people with hellfire. It's not okay. And you will never be okay. And whoever thinks it's okay, let their head examine. It is not loving. It's not caring. It is horrific. And we got to start thinking about those things critically, because if we don't, we're going to pass this on to the next generation and the next generation to the next generation. We say, well, we have to respect everybody's beliefs and everybody's religion. Imagine that this ideology is spread among governments and businesses. Just imagine if a president, let's say Trump, says, join United States or I'm going to nuke the crap out of this world. You have to become a citizen of United States. We'll give you the process. We'll give you our laws. You have to obey them. And when you prove yourself that you're a good citizen and you following all our rules, will save your life. But if you don't, you're going to fry. Would that be a good person? Would we consider that a free will that he's giving us? That is the people's choice. I mean, they have a choice to join United States if they wanted to. But they chose not to, so he had the right to kill them. Would we say that it's okay? I don't think so. Why do we take exactly the same thinking and don't apply it in religion, in faith? When we say, well, God has the right to kill whoever he wants. You just have to obey. You have to take Christ into your heart and you'll be saved. But the people who were born maybe in I don't know, Iran, oh, they can all fry because they don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And for them, if you say that the Jesus is the Son of God, they believe they're going to end up in hell, tortured forever. While you say the same thing to a Christian, they said, well, of course I have to. How do we expect justice from others when I read the Bible, when I look at the religions, when I look at people's beliefs about God, about Jesus, about Allah, about Muhammad? They're the most unjust there is. None of us would do the crimes that are there in the Bible. And I'm just going to stick in the Bible for a moment. Because I asked this question many times. I asked, would you do what God did in the Old Testament? Would you go kill the firstborn children to change somebody's mind? Would you do it? And then would you normally say, wow, well, I would not do it, but God can do it. Right? Well, then if God is telling you, do what I tell you to do, but don't do what I do, then Jesus clearly said that is what we call a hypocrisy, because Jesus said, follow my footsteps, do what I do. Pharisees are telling you, do what I tell you to do, but don't do what I do. That's hypocrisy. So if God says, do what I tell you to do, but don't do what I do, then God is a hypocrite. So look at things a little bit more objectively and try to figure it out. You know what? Can I free myself from all this? This is why I'm running this channel, because I want people to start asking the hard questions. I want people to free themselves from fear of asking tough questions. You might not agree with me, and that's fine, but don't be afraid of asking the tough questions. Ask what is just. And I tell you, the number one problem with any religion is that people look at justice through the lenses of sin. They're looking at justice through the lenses of sin, not what's harmful, but what is sinful. So if you're Jew, you read the Bible and you go pick up sticks in the Sabbath. The poor guy didn't know whether there was right or wrong. There was a commandment that said you must not work on Sabbath, but people caught him and they didn't know whether he was guilty or not. He didn't know himself. The people around him didn't know. So they took him to Moses and they asked Moses, what should we do with him? We saw that he was working, but we don't know whether what he was doing was classified as a sin. And you know what? Moses didn't know either. So Moses said, wait, okay, I don't know. I got to figure this out. He goes to the tent, prays, and God says, stone that man. So now the man doesn't know whether it's right or wrong. The people don't know whether it's right or wrong. Moses does not know whether it's right or wrong. God says, you have to be killed because of it. And people stone him to death. And that somehow is just. But then you read another story of, what's his name? Manasseh. Manasseh was a horrible king. He killed Isaiah. He cut him in half. He would pass his son through the fire, set up false worship. He broke every rule there is. Did God kill him? Did God punish him? No. He lost the war, so he ended up in jail. And then guess what? He prayed, God, forgive me. God says, okay, no problem. Back to the kingdom. You're king again. Would you come up with the same judgment? So we're talking about two different weights for one person versus the other person. One person was picking up wood on Sabbath, not knowing whether he's doing right or wrong, whether this is classified as a death punishment. Maybe he was just doing it for his own family. Maybe he was cold. I don't know what the reason was. He does not, and the reason doesn't matter. He's like, okay, here's a man needs to be stoned to death. And then you got another person who breaks every rule of the book there is, offends God in any way you possibly can think of. And all he had to do is pray for forgiveness, and it was all forgiven to him. Why one person didn't even have a chance while the other person was forgiven? Extreme injustice. Now people say, hey, yeah, Jack, you know what? You're talking about the Old Testament. Old Testament, lots of bad things in the Old Testament, but we're not Jewish. That's the old law. We are Christians, and Christians, they have a law of love. So you tell me this. If God is just, then why would he say that he hates child sacrifice, but he would not forgive humans unless he saw his own son being sacrificed? Why could he just forgive people? Imagine this. Your great-great-great-grandfather did something bad, and all those generations are suffering because of it, because your great-great-grandfather borrowed money and he couldn't pay. And the debt with interest grew so big, nobody can possibly pay for this. Now, you go to the person and says, I didn't borrow this money. It's not my fault that this happened. Why am I being punished? And then the person who lended the money says, oh, you know what? I have a great idea. I cannot forgive you for this debt that your ancestors took. But what I can do is I can beat up my son. I have a son. I'm going to send him, and he's going to get beat up. And then we'll make sure that he's dead. And when he's dead and we see he's flatlining, after that, we're going to use the defibrillator and we're going to bring him back to life. And then your debt is forgiven. You're going to grab your head like, well, have you lost your mind? Like, what kind of a plan is this? Like, if somebody did something wrong, that person should pay for their mistake, not generation after generation. And then you take an innocent person like your child, you're going to beat them up or give it somebody else to beat them up and then kill them and then bring them back to life. And you're just going to say, unless you see these things happen, you will not forgive me? That's ludicrous. And yet, that's part of the plan. That is a plan that every Christian on this planet believes in. They don't think there was a better way. For me, that's just crazy talk. But we all believed it because it was part of the plan. If there is no better plan, you're going to stick with the one they gave you. And they're going to think this is part of love. Let's see how loving God is. He's not demanding that you're going to pay this debt. He's going to cause his son to pay this debt through horrific death. The son was begging a night before, please take this away from me, Father. So he didn't want to do it either. But God said, no, I don't see any other way. You have to go through it. I'm like, come on, seriously? Would you do it? Would you follow God's footsteps? Would you say, this is what must happen in order for things to be just? I find it to be extremely unjust. I think Christians take it even to another level where they say, you know what? Because of Jesus's blood sacrifice, now we have grace. And you're saved by grace. You're not saved by your works, but you're saved by grace. So anyone who takes Jesus into their heart is saved. Once saved, always saved. So imagine you have Hitler who would commit horrific crimes, unforgivable crimes against humanity. And right before he dies, he says, Lord, please, I believe in you. And based on my faith, please save me, enter my heart. I love you. And then he dies. And then he's going to end up in heaven because grace is supposed to cover all the sins, not one or two or little ones, all the sins, including all the sins and the crimes and awful things that Hitler did and the people who served him. It's all forgiven because that's what grace is. The greater the sin, the more the grace works. The more Jesus said, the more you own the master, the more the master will forgive you, the more the slave will love the master. The more you're forgiven, the more you're going to love the master. So it doesn't matter how big of a debt that is. The bigger the debt is, the more you're going to love the master. So Hitler will love God even more because, like, I have so many sins and you forgave them all. What a wonderful God you are. Is that just? And now you have a young 17-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl somewhere in Iran who believes in Muhammad and says, no, Jesus was not the son of God. He was a prophet. Allah is the true God. That's what she was taught. And then she's going to be tortured in hell or killed in Armageddon. Is that just? Would that be something that you would do if you were the judge? For me, the whole thing is just so weird that if you add a little bit of logic in this, you realize that the whole thing is just one big scam. And what shocks me, I think, the most is that if you take people who are very religious, who are very strong believers, and you put them in one room and they're all believing the same God and their faith is as strong as it gets. And then one person says, God told me to hurt somebody else. I killed this person because God told me to do it. He was an apostate. He was about to wage a war against Christians or something like that. And God told me, God answered my prayer. I didn't like it, but I had to do it. I wonder who from this group of Christians would say, okay, no problem. If God told you to kill him or her, fine with me. You're innocent. Go home free. Would they do it? They believe the same God. Or would they say, no, something's wrong with you? But why would they do that? If they believe the same God, if they believe the same justice, why would they question? So, in conclusion, if you're watching this, ask yourself, how do you determine what is just? How do you determine it now? Are you still wearing the glasses of, is this sinful or not? Or are you going to look at things with what is harmful and what is not harmful? What is good, what is bad is determined whether we are making life better or whether we're making life worse. If we're making life worse for ourselves and others, great. That is what we want to do. That's our purpose in life, to improve the quality of life. Or are you making life worse? Are you causing harm? This is why we're creating law. Every law, secular law that was ever created, was because we notice one person is harming another, and we have to create a law that will prevent from these things to happen again. If you want total freedom, go on an island where there's no humans. You will have total freedom. You can set up your own laws. But the moment another person shows up on that island, guess what? You're going to have to set up rules. You're going to eat here. You don't want the person to pee over here. You're going to say, this is where I sleep. I don't want you to be cooking here. Whatever it is, you're going to set up laws of what's right, what's wrong, because another person can harm the other. And this is going forward. Those are the values that you should have by looking at what is harmful. And if my decisions are harming somebody else, then reevaluate your beliefs and values, because based on these, we should determine whether something is just or not. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.